Well, we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition and another High Talk session, our High Talk number 5. Today, we have a really special guest, as always. Besides our beautiful Natalie, we have Cindy Brummer with us. Um, she's here today to talk about adapting usability testing for AI interfaces. And for the ones at home that don't know Cindy, she is a senior UX designer. She is also a researcher, and she is the owner of her own company. She will talk about that in a bit. But yeah, before we start, hi Cindy, hi Natalie, how are you?
Hi.
Okay. And for the ones at home, I want to greet you all. And before we start, I want to ask everyone to drop us a like, to follow and subscribe High Interactive here on YouTube. We have plenty more content like this prepared for you. We have more iTalks. We have a special surprise in May that should be almost like unveiling itself on our social media, and I want all of you to stay tuned for that. And yeah, let's start. Natalie, can you lead this on?
Yes, yes, of course. First, let me thank you again for Cindy to put time aside to be today with us. I'm very happy to have you here. Well, I always say that, but it's true because I always look for professionals that are passionate and, well, I follow them or see if, the work they do, and I think they always bring such good insights and such good experience to share with us. So thank you, Cindy.
Oh, you're the
uh,
best.
so as João said, Cindy Brummer is a senior UX researcher and creative director and CEO at Standard Beagle Studio. And as you were sharing with us today, you recently are a UX researcher certified, right?
Yeah, it's a accredited UX professional. I just got my accreditation, and it's in user research, information architecture, and UX strategy.
Okay, so congratulations,
Thank
Cindy.
you. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, about our topic today will be about adapting usability testing for AI interfaces. So, as AI continues to shape our interactions with technology, understanding how users navigate these interfaces become crucial, right? So, Cindy will bring a wealth of experience in this field, and well, that let's dive into it. I will start with our first question to Cindy. Um, in your experience, what do you think would be the biggest challenges for users that users face when interacting with the AI interfaces?
Ooh, such a good question. Well, part of it is that I think a big challenge is that some people don't understand when AI is even present. When generative AI started taking up headlines last year, it was like, oh, AI is here. And to be quite honest, it's been around for a bit. It's not
Yeah.
brand new, right? I mean, how else does Google Maps work, right? And we're all used to that in our daily lives. So the fact that all of a sudden it's become apparent and there's some question about, okay, what is it doing? A lot of people don't understand what AI is. And even this morning I was doing some usability testing, and it wasn't actually something, they weren't interacting with the AI in the tool, but the tool had something where they could click a button and it would do something with the AI. And they were
Mhm.
actually quite reticent to use it. They were like, I don't know if I want to use this thing, right?
Reliable, right?
Yeah, so it's this matter of trust, and then there's still this perception that humans are going to do things better in some cases. Now, I mean, obviously not everybody is like that, and it's just from my small sphere of talking to people, but there's this sphere of like, okay, AI can do some things, but they can't do everything. And I still want that human interaction. So I think that's going to be a big challenge is understanding where the tools are implementing AI, how it
Mhm.
affects them, and then, garnering trust in order to actually use the interface.
And well, you were talking about the lack of transparency, right? It's something really important for companies and for users to know exactly what AI is going to do with the information that I am going to put there or in a specific tool or and that is something that it's preventing people to be trust and use it completely how would help them, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And why do you think it's important to adapt traditional usability testing methods for AI? Or can we just use the methodology that we have for usability testing the same way for AI interfaces?
Well, certainly, usability testing has a strong foundation in the traditional methods, but it AI is a very different type of thing, right? It's not appropriate to just, come in one and done. We're not talking about a static interface that where it's going to take time to make updates. This is an interface that is dynamic and is changing, and the answers are changing, and the way that it's reacting to the user is changing. And so the traditional way of doing it is like, okay, we're just going to test these tasks. That's going to tell us all the information that we need to know, and then we'll go and fix them. But when we're dealing with AI, the AI can actually make changes on the fly as it
Dynamic nature,
learns.
right?
Right. And
Yeah.
so if we try to do the our traditional style, we're going to miss a lot of stuff. And so we're not truly getting an idea of how the user is interacting with the AI itself. We're only getting a feel for how the layout and the components are working for them, but not specifically how the user is interacting with the tool and what changes are happening.
Yeah. So we need to do the testings, taking consideration that it's not just the needs to go. Well, it needs to go behind just click on buttons and delve into how well the AI interpret user intent behind just the words, right? Uh,
Yeah. And on top of that too is, there's this, for forever we've said, oh, hey, you can do 5 usability tests on this particular, anybody, right? And that's going to tell us 80% of what we need to know on
mhm,
what to fix priority. But this is everybody's different, right? We can't necessarily box all sorts of people into like one big box. And I'm not sure that having just saying, okay, 5 tests and we're going to be done is going to be appropriate when every person is going to interact differently. The way that you and I have a conversation is going to be different from the conversation that I might have with my kids. Um, and just like humans interact differently with each other, different people are going to interact differently with the AI. That's what makes it so powerful, right? Is
mhm.
that it can personalize the experience for that person. So if we're only testing on like a handful of people just to, see how it works and if it's usable, well, we're missing out on the whole range of potential
Yeah.
outcomes
I
that
don't
we
know if
might need to adjust.
this is a fair question, but from your experience, uh, what would be the number or the number of testing to get enough information to do a specific iteration on AI interface?
Ha! I like how you're trying to like get me to say a number. All my students do that too.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
the answer that my students all hate is, well, it depends, right? It
Yeah.
depends on how many people, uh, how many different types of people. And so, you might have different types of use cases, and you can't really go off of demographics, I don't think. I don't
Mhm.
actually love demographics most of the
Yeah.
time anyway, because you can just stereotype and box people into corners and it doesn't work.
And sometimes you have the same data for demographics, but uh, people itself are completely different.
Right. And their behaviors are different, right?
Yeah.
So the way that we're interacting with, tools is going to depend on context, and then everybody has different use cases. So you could probably, get people together based on, okay, how are they using it, or where are they using it, or, you know, you can almost fit it into a jobs to be done type of framework,
Mhm.
but it's all
Mhm.
going to depend on like how broad is the market that you're trying to reach, and then
Yeah.
trying to understand. So when I was thinking about this in terms of, okay, if I was looking at an AI interface, how would I break that up? So specifically, I use Spotify like all the time. Like literally it plays like every day. And if like in its AI, right? It has the AI shuffle now where it's recommending songs. And at first I hated it because I was like, you have no idea what I want to listen to, right? But it was starting to learn from me. But then I started thinking about, okay, well, I'm just me, right? But there's lots of different people who are listening and have different habits. So how do you break that up? So, in terms of my wear, I'm always listening in the car, and I'm
Mhm.
always driving from one place to another. But then again, my kids always take my Spotify and then they're playing their
Oh,
songs,
okay.
right? And so that's like a very different use case than someone who does not have other people around who are taking and interacting with it and changing the way that it learns, right?
I have that example as well with my Spotify because I usually have, well, listen to specific things, very different things, but sometimes my boyfriend uses my Spotify as well, and he has a completely different taste. And then sometimes it happens that I have some suggestions that I know, oh, this is because of Gonzalo was here searching things on my Spotify.
Right? Then you're like, "What is this?" Right?
Yeah.
So like when you're testing, like you have to test those different types of context, and you're not necessarily going to get that from just a handful of users, and it's really difficult if you're just saying, okay, I need this many users to be able to nail down those types of scenarios. So this is where having, some sort of idea of the use cases and the context can come in, where you can really see. Now, I mean, I'm a big believer that some testing, even if it's not ideal, is better than no testing at
Yes.
all.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, if you can make it ideal, right? If you have, let's say you have 10 different personas, right? Can you break them down into the different behaviors and look at like what is the commonality across them, but then also what is the difference between them? And you might have to bring in multiple people per persona as like a initial like establishment group just to see how they interact differently, and then you can
Results,
refine.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and then you can adjust your testing from there, because honestly, you're not going to do one test. You're going to do lots of tests
Yeah.
over and over and over again, hopefully with the same people over time.
And probably, and mainly in AI interfaces, during the test, you will find more things that you should test that you didn't think at the beginning of the test, right?
Hmm. And then it becomes a question of how do you prioritize? Like,
Yes.
how do you do that? Yeah. I was just thinking too. I use Otter. I don't know if y'all use Otter, but I love Otter. We've been using it for so long, and they keep adding new features. And today, for the first time, I realized that there was this Otter chat, like AI chat, and I'm
Okay.
like, "What is this thing?" And so I was like, "Okay, I've got these interviews, right? Can it help me like compare them?" And so here I am exploring as a user. I'm like, what can it do? How am I having it do it? And I'm like, oh my God. Right. Like I'm just realizing things and what it's
Yeah.
learning from me. that's, that's the adjustment, right? If somebody was watching me, that they would be able to see, like, how does that exploration happen? What were the things that led to this person
Yeah.
finding this, testing this? I'm an explorer. Then there's some people that are going to have to be, kind of dragged to use that
Yes,
particular,
we need to do
feature.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And about the this testing discussion that we are talking, uh, what do you think would be? What do you think are some unique aspects of the AI interfaces that require different testings compared to a traditional interface? We talked a little bit about some examples, but you have any other insights about that?
Well, I mean, the ones that I'm most familiar with right now are the chat interfaces.
Okay.
And they're having a conversation with a bot. You've got to have, you almost have to have a long conversation and then come back to it. That really does change how you test, because you have to think about, how am I going to structure this so I'm not
Mhm.
giving the person the question, and I'm trying to learn from them what kinds of questions they want to ask. And then what are, how is the bot helping the user learn what kinds of questions to ask? So in the case of Otter, it had some suggestions of
Mhm.
questions for me to ask once it figured out what I was trying to do. I'm on LinkedIn, and it has its new AI thing on every single post where you're supposed to ask a question. And I look at them and I'm like, these are the dumbest questions I've ever seen. What kind of bot is interacting with this? So in terms of the bot itself or the prompts and helping people learn how to use the AI, I think, that's a big piece that you want to test. Um, and guys, there's just so many opportunities. Normally, it's textual responses that you're testing, but you know, it could
Like
be
voice
anything.
interfaces, for example, when you, well, in here you have a lot of more different perspectives, uh, like culture, like I forgot the word for sotaque. João, help me.
Accent.
Accent, sorry.
Hmm.
Different accents. Um, that could be something interesting to test and could lead to different insights.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And then it's so nebulous now, right? Like, it's so
Mhm.
early and nascent, and it's just kind of interesting to see these tools, how they learn over time, and either the developers slash team are adding these features, or the AI is progressing. And so I think that's the biggest thing in terms of the testing, is thinking about it on a long-term basis,
Okay.
having more of a longitudinal study, and that could be over weeks, months, even years, with the same people. So kind of think of it like a medical study, right? You don't just come in and look at this person and say, oh, okay, you have this condition. Here's what I learned, and I'm going to go away, and that's all I need. In medicine, they do longitudinal studies where they see how the person is changing over time. How does their condition change? How does, the health, how do the health indicators change? And so they have to have that person come back on a regular basis in order to actually get good insights. And I would liken the AI testing to that, because the only way to get good insights is because of that change over time, not only for the AI, but also for the person, because as they learn
Oh,
the
yeah.
interface, they're changing how they react to it. So now all of a sudden I found this tool on Otter, and I'm like, well, now I'm going to use it all the time. So how am I going to use it? Where am I going to use more of it? Right. And so if those folks from Otter, if they're listening, if they come in and they watched me, they'd be able to learn a lot about me, and those
Mhm.
things that I think are important in terms of it. And then other things of, like, where could it integrate? What are the things that are important to me? So as a researcher, I want have post-it notes on my sticky board, and I want to circle it, and I want the AI to tell me what patterns it sees from that. without me having to copy and paste all the text into a little text thing. So
Yes.
then what does that interface look like? I don't know. Maybe there's some co-design that also happens with users, as
Mm,
you're testing the AI and figuring out, like, okay, well, what are the things that you want to do? Is the text input actually the most efficient for them, or is there a more efficient way to do it?
should we have other approach to help our users to be more efficient of what the tool is giving to the users, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that leads me to the next question that I was going to ask you about some usability testing techniques that could be specifically tailored for AI powered features like
Mhm.
voice assistants or chatbots. You are talking about doing a continuous testing, like for a long period of time. I thought that was really interesting, a really good approach for the specifics requirement of AI tool and what we can found during that time. Do you have any other techniques that you think would be interesting to use with AI tools?
Yeah. So, and I think you might have like kind of touched on it when we were talking about accents, but like the sentiment analysis, like
Mm-hmm.
understanding, okay, what are the words, like those specific words that people are using and how they respond, whether it be text or, voice, you know, positive, negative, where, what are the things that are coming out of it? So just some sort of either, sentiment or emotion analysis on it. And also just maybe even the tone. Like if there's a way to go through and have the AI say, okay, here's the tone that we're picking up. It's a more of a hostile tone. Or, because they might use very level language, but the tone changes everything. And we
Mm-hmm.
may not pick up on it if, we're not watching the interview again and we're only
Yeah,
looking at the transcript, which is what I tend to do. Is just look at the
I lost
transcript.
that, right? The
Right.
tone and the accents. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the things that we can miss sometimes? Although we as humans, right, we're very good at spotting tone changes. So maybe
Mhm.
having the AI, go there are some tools that will do sentiment analysis. I'm seeing more of that. And that would be a really interesting way to test interfaces or just general like interaction with an AI tool.
Yes. Other example that I want to share with you, I was searching for this talk to share with you, and one of the things that I found was a Wizard of Oz testing. That is like you imagine that we don't have a tool yet developed. So how can we test the behavior or simulate the behavior of that tool? So a human will simulate the AI behind the scenes, allowing for real-time adjustments like a real AI would
Yeah.
do. Uh,
Yeah.
User interaction, and that will help to test how users react to different AI behaviors.
That's also a great tool for, like, when you're initially getting your AI tool up and running
Yes,
too, right? Like, 'cause it takes time. And
yes,
so if you're like, "Is this even a good idea?" And, your product team's, like, behind the curtains trying to do that. That's how, what is it? Instacart in the United States did
yes.
it, right? They, like, pretended that, that somebody like, there was a machine doing all of it, and no, they're actually doing all of it, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. I'm looking at my notes to see what else I had written down. Um, yeah, that's, I mean, the big ones though, I think, is just making sure that you come out of that mindset that the one
Mhm.
and done is the only way to do it. There's, you know, likely, some automated tools that could come through. And I know that there's probably like these third party platforms where you can do unmoderated testing, and you
Mhm.
could probably leverage those tools, their AI tools, to test your AI.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I've learned, is that AI is very good at understanding itself. And so one AI tool actually gives you a pretty good idea of how another another AI tool can
Okay.
act and how it would respond. They're not the best at people yet, but they're really good at like telling you how things work. And so if you like having a tool that can actually do the testing for you and test it if you had no human involved, that's
Mhm.
another good way to do it. So maybe, setting up some like usability and having an AI go through and test it
Yeah.
for you would be a way
Okay.
to do it, you know.
Good advice. And I would like to. Well, there's a lot of talk about the trust and transparency on AI tools. How do you think we can do usability tests to help ensure users trust and understand the capabilities and the limitations of AI interfaces?
Yeah. With usability testing, I think it's the biggest thing is developing rapport with your user. So
Mhm.
when you're with them in the test, this is why unmoderated testing is difficult. You don't get a
Yeah.
chance to do rapport building. So having rapport, and when they trust you, they tend to trust that whatever you're showing them is
Yes.
trustworthy. But then there's this a big piece of that is just being transparent and explaining this is AI, this is how it was set up, this is what it was trained on, this is how I'm going to use your interview. If you just leave it to the imagination, most people are going to go to the most negative thought that they have.
Oh,
They're not going to assume the best, they're going to assume something else. So
mm,
being super transparent about what you're doing and then what the tool does in a way where we wouldn't normally do that, right? In traditional testing, we're like, hey, we're going to show you a website that we want to make better, but we're not going to tell them much about it. I think we need to change that with the AI. We got to say, there's an AI tool, this is how it was trained, and these are the things that it can do. And answer any questions before you actually start the test. That way, you know, they use it in an exploratory manner instead of being like, I don't want to touch that. I don't know what it's going to do. If
yeah.
that makes sense, you know?
Yes, I was thinking about, well, we have this problem, this issue about, because it's a new thing for most of the people, and we usually, when we have a new thing, we don't trust it. Um, if we explain something that in a real context users will not have that explanation, would we could we be bias our test or the result or the behavior that that user would be in a real situation? What is your opinion?
It's, I mean, that's always a risk, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, I think any AI tool should be explaining. And you
Yes.
see this a lot, right? You already see it explaining what it does. Hey, you're going to put these things in here and it might come out inaccurate. Just
Mhm.
heads up,
Let's
right?
confirm the
Mhm.
information. Yeah.
So instead of relying on a user to find that on their own, the tester has to just go ahead and say it,
Mhm.
you know. And so yes, to an extent, we're biasing it. So it depends on the test, right? If we're
Yes.
testing like users that we want to test, like actually use the AI tool itself, then I don't think we're biasing it in a negative way. If we're testing to see if people are going to use it, that's a very different thing,
Yeah.
right?
So it
So,
will always depend of the context, right? Of the what we want to test.
mhm,
That needs to
absolutely.
be clear. Well, it's always, but in this case specifically, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's going to depend on what answers do you want from the testing to see what's going to happen.
Okay. And well, about considering the future as AI interfaces continue to evolve, what do you think would be the emergent trends that could impact our usability testing methods?
Oh, well, just about everything is going to change our methods, right? Um, I think we're being pulled in a couple of different directions as
Mhm.
researchers and even designers. Our entire industry is being turned upside down by
Mhm.
AI. We're expected to not only design for it, but design with it or research with it. And trying to figure all that out, right? And at the same time, I think there's going to be pressure on researchers in particular, but also designers to work more efficiently with these tools. And so, coming up with the hey, we should do a longitudinal study may no, you're supposed to just use AI. It's supposed to be fast. That may be like this weird like tension that's happening in companies of I think we're going to have to show them the why we want to do it this way and that we can't always just have AI go in and test it for us. We've got to show the value of being able to do it. Hey, we'll use AI tools as part of this in order to synthesize the research and all that. But we have to get in front of real people because we can't simulate that. I, I mean, I haven't gone back in a while to look at that one product synthetic users, but I was like, no, you can't test on synthetic users. It's just not going to work. I
Okay.
can't test on stereotypes. This is
Mhm.
why I need to test on real people who have real problems and things like that. So, but I think there's going to be pressure on us to use those kinds of tools,
Mhm.
and I don't know at this point how to work through that right now. I think we're all going to have to kind of come together as an
The
industry.
steps, right?
Yeah, and we'll have to say these are the best practices. This is what we should be doing. Um, but we're a very, you know, large group of professionals that have a lot of different opinions on the way to do things. So I think that's going to be a challenge for us.
And other thing that, well, I think would have a very big impact on the way we do user testing is in current interactions, or the most common one, we always have a screen uh, in a statical device uh, for a human to use. And we will starting to see more and more like embodied AI, physical AI, robots, things like that. And
Mhm.
how can we test things like that, a human interacting, or well, a robot interacting with a robot? So we will need to adapt the way we do things to have a more contextual scenario and with the more relevant results.
Yeah, absolutely. This actually excites me too because rarely do I get to do the observational study or even the ethnographic study. But that's a perfect use case for that, is seeing it in context, spending time with the
Yeah.
user in their environment, not having them come into my environment, but going to
Yes.
them and seeing how that works. And I think to a lesser extent, even diary studies, depending on how long it
Mhm.
is, having someone talk about and reflect on how they used the tool or the whatever the device was, um, a little bit less accurate in some cases, but still has a lot of value to it. So those types of things that aren't as common in a lot of ways as your standard come in and test with me, and then I'll give you a gift and we'll say goodbye. You know that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know, well, if possible, do you have any case study of how adapting usability testing for AI interface that led you to a successful outcome?
I wish I could say I did. I'm currently working with a company that has a very early AI tool. So we're just starting
Mm-hmm.
that process. We haven't had, the time or the funding to go into like what would be like deeper, just because the AI isn't quite ready yet. but that is the next step, is to look at that. And right now we're looking long term. It's specifically in medical, like how do
Oh,
doctors, how do their results change in from surgery based on feedback that they receive from a tool. And so over time we'll hopefully be able to track those kinds of things, and then at the same time be able to see how accurate is the AI in
okay.
terms of giving them that, and what do they think the value is from that. Because right now I'm getting mixed opinions about how it should work and how often they would use it. Um, so I'm very early in my case study in terms of reviewing that with people.
We can do this, have a second session of this talk when you can share all those results in a further down in a
Yeah,
few months later.
yeah.
Um, and what is your experience of what could be some ethical considerations when testing with AI interfaces, that particular concerning user privacy and data security?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I was actually thinking about this earlier because, you know, I'm like, oh, this is a third party tool. Is this really where I should be putting this transcript to have it be
Mhm.
analyzed? You know, the, I know that there are some companies that are developing their own in-house tools for analysis. So they might be using something, but it's all firewalled off. I think Microsoft gives you some ability to do that. So they train it on your own internal data, or whatever data you put in there stays. So I think some companies are really thinking about this. I think that, there's still a wild, wild west out there. We're only really just starting to make headway in terms of the ethics. I know that in Europe, where the AI rules are in place, in the United States, it's still like, woo, we're AI everywhere. We don't need to think
Yeah,
about ethics. That's not true. There are definitely people thinking about it. But at the same time, it's not legislated. And
yeah.
then, so as a researcher, do I have the user's permission to put it into a tool? I mean, that's a
Mhm.
big thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think we need to think about that in terms of our consent agreements. I think we need to know exactly how these companies are using the data that we're feeding in order to get our insights. Are they using it to train? Are they holding on to it? If you'll remember the big hubbub with Zoom sometime in the last year, I mean,
Yes,
people were mad, you know,
really.
that the idea that somebody else was gonna hold on to their data and it didn't belong to them. So, you know, I think people are starting to really think about, like, "Huh, is this right? Are we doing it like this?" Some users don't wanna be recorded. So if you're recording a transcript of them, do they understand that just because it's not video, they're still being recorded? You know,
Yeah.
because it may not be audio. And then, the other thing I was thinking about is there was this idea that all these companies were just going to start firing people and roll out AI, and it was just going to be ubiquitous everywhere. But we're not really seeing that. What we're seeing is some companies holding back while they think through the risks
Hmm.
and the implications of it. And so, as researchers, if we're freelance or if we're working with lots of different companies, we're going to have to learn what those policies are because they might differ between companies. And then we're probably going to have to establish our own uh, if we're working in house or we're working independently. So I think there's a lot to sort out in
Yes.
terms of how we use the data with AI.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to do in terms of patterns, in terms of processes, in terms of rules that we should take in consideration. And we should not avoid the topic, but be part of this, and well, work to increase the trust and the transparency of the work and all the activities that we can do using AI tools or whatever others as well, but in this case, it's more important.
Definitely. And I'll share one last thing is that I also teach UX, and what I started telling my students was that you need to learn how to use this because the I don't think AI is going to completely replace UX practitioners, but I do think the UX practitioner that uses AI will replace the one that
Yeah,
doesn't.
we'll do a better job.
So it's just going to happen, and I'm insisting in class that they actually try all these different tools and start making it part of their process. So watch out if you're not using it.
Yeah, Cindy. So we are heading at the end of our talk. I'm sad, but we can spend much more hours here talking about the topic. That's a lot to talk about. But we are at the end, and we are going to ask the audience to participate and share some questions for Cindy as well. We have questions as well for the Q&A. So we talked about transparency, methodology, ethical. So there are a lot of topics inside just the usability testing with AI. There's a lot of work to do, and it's a whole world inside a bigger world. So, João, please.
Okay, my turn for the questions now. First of all, thanks Cindy and Natalie for this great talk. It was a pleasure watching this in the front line. So, so yeah, I'm having. I guess I'm having some internet connection problems. If my sound turns off or so, please
If
let.
you disappeared,
Yeah,
we
if you disappear, you will know why. So
okay.
so yeah. First question, Cindy. Do you? I'm sure you've talked about tools that you use on your daily basis, but like, do you have any recommendations for tools or resources that can help conduct usability testing on these AI interfaces that we've been talking about?
In terms of automated tools, I haven't used any. I'm sure there are some, and
Okay.
I have looked. My guess is that some of the platforms that do unmoderated are probably going to add it. So I haven't checked out user testing in a while. I have more been using AI in my process for the analysis and synthesis of it. So, having, Otter transcribe it so I don't have to do it manually. I know that Miro has a new tool called Miro Assist, which will help you look at everything on the canvas and start to make sense of it. And then, I was just like, oh, the Otter chat can tell me like patterns across like multiple conversations that I've had. You can also do the same thing with prompting through Chat GPT. I'm sure there's going to be dozens that it can help. In terms of the testing, though, you're probably using like a AI platform, and this is probably a prime market for someone to actually create a testing tool that is
Mhm.
specifically for testing AI. Although I want to be careful about not having humans as part of it, you know?
Okay.
Make sure to include a human being during the process.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's that for that question, Cindy. Thanks. Another question that I have here for you and Natalie also is about these adapted testing methods that you've talked about. How can these adapted testing methods can be integrated into existing design workflows and also AI projects?
Natalie, feel free to interrupt me if you want to hop in. So, so the way that I would start is start small. So, don't make it over complicated or anything like that. At least think, okay, I want to do 3 different tests over time and just see. So, instead of planning 1 round of testing, go ahead and plan that you're going to have 3 over whatever that time period is. And then when you recruit that user, make sure that they understand that this is just one of
Mm,
3. So, how are you going to handle that kind of budgeting? But, it doesn't have to be huge scale, right? It could be like literally you could go with 5 or 6 users over, do them 3 times over a period of 3 months. Just set that expectation up front that it's going to be multiple times. And I think that's a good gateway to starting to implement these techniques, because once you analyze and are able to show value, I think that companies will see like, oh, this is a different way to do it. This is actually quite valuable. And also, then you're not having to recruit this like different people for every single test that you do. You're just testing on the same people 3 different times or however many times that you think is appropriate.
Yes, I think that it's a very big gain for us that we can reuse a user in 3 different stages, for example, to help us to identify how the tool is improving or not for the purpose of it. And I agree with the starting small. Well, if we don't have a specific testing method for AI projects, we can review our process and see for little steps where we can improve with AI. For example, helping prepare our guidelines, helping prepare our questions. If it's a field that I don't know much about it and I didn't start my research yet, I can use AI to help me understand what questions I should have asked, and then iterate and readjust again. The human go and review the work of AI, our helper, right? Things like that. Starting small, see the results, and adapting always.
Yeah. I do think that if you and I had this conversation in a year, we're going to have some different things to say about it too.
Well,
You know,
Yeah,
that I
probably.
mean, we'll adapt how we apply these things, and like even how we do, like right now, this is what AI, what the best way is right now, but it's going to adapt, pretty
sure.
exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure, we'll be here in a year on another high talk talking about the same topic, but with different perspectives, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brown will be a robot.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just kidding.
Not a robot, but like a cyborg, half a human,
Yes.
half a robot. So, yeah, but we are almost reaching an hour here at our iTalk today. And I think it's time for the last question. I think it's time we end this with a simple question that I have for you, Cindy. And we've talked briefly about this during the talk, and also on the last question that I've asked you. And it is like when you are doing AI usability testing with lower resources, which aspects should you prioritize? Which should be the main aspects that you should be prioritizing when you have less resources?
Oh, good question. So, well, with fewer resources, I would just make sure you get in the number of testing sessions on the same person,
Okay.
and do it over time. That's what I would probably prioritize. Although Chat GPT does a pretty good job of looking at stuff and telling you some interesting things about it. So
Sure.
also experiment with how free tools can help you understand better what's out there. There are still some things that have a low cost, you know, entry that you can start trying now,
Okay.
in a free
Yeah.
trial.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the I was thinking when you had that question, I was thinking about the Wizard of Oz methodology or technique that we will use a human to fake like he's an AI. Well, it's a small resource to use to test something that it's not developed yet. Could be a
It could
choice.
It could be, although AI is real weird. So my husband is reading this book all about AI experiments. And so like they trained this algorithm and it like they said, okay, your job is to keep people, there were two doors. Your job is to keep people from going in this door.
Mhm.
And the way that the AI figured out how to do it was to start killing people. And
Oh,
so that was what it thought was the right thing to do. So then they have to go in and they have to figure out how to keep the people alive. So there's a lot of things that AI will do that we won't think of, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz is good. But we also have to keep in mind that AI will do some things that we don't expect, which is makes our jobs even more interesting, right?
yeah, it sure does. So, yeah, I think that is it for the questions, Cindy and Natalie. Thanks, the both of you, for sticking up for almost 1 hour talking about this topic.
Yeah.
I guess that also the ones at home have as much fun as I had hearing you both. So yeah, now I'm speaking to the ones at home. If you have any complimentary questions or any doubts that you may have watching this on demand, or even now, you can always drop us a question on the comment section of this video. We'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions and doubts. And I don't know what type of things you you may want to ask us. Feel free to do so. And yeah, see you on the next I Talk. And Cindy and Natalie, thanks again, and see you in the future I Talk, like in a year or so, where we should change our minds on this AI topic. So
Yeah.
Thank you very
uh,
Thank
much.
you, Cindy.
thanks, bye bye.